he had inadvertently crawled into a still unmapped part of the cave. And this part of the cave led to a dead end. Those of us who are familiar with this story will know exactly where this video is going. Nutty Putty Cave is a hydrothermal cave located in west of Utah Lake in Utah County, Utah. The cave system contains 1,400 feet or 430 meters of chutes and tunnels that are accessible via a narrow surface hole. Dale Green first discovered the underground network of caves in 1960, and he is responsible for naming it Nutty Putty due to the putty-like texture of the soft brown clay found in many of its tunnels. Since its discovery, Nutty Putty quickly became one of the most popular caves in Utah. Its narrow, slippery passageways, twists, turns and squeezes were a must-do challenge for both professional and amateur cavers. It was also a go-to location for Boy Scout troops and college students. However, it's also known for its dangers, and various parts of the cave were given ominous names, such as the Birth Canal, the Aorta Crawl, the Scout Eater, and the Maze. Green himself recalled getting stuck in Nutty Putty when he crawled into one unmapped section of the cave. He crawled in and realized he couldn't back out, and found himself trapped and upside down, with just his feet sticking out of a hole. He was able to yell at a friend to help him, and after some efforts, his friend was able to pull him out. Green, an experienced caver, vowed never to go near that section again. However, he wasn't the only person to get stuck in the cave. From 1999 to 2004, 6 people became stuck in the cave and had to be rescued. In 2006, efforts were made to try and limit the amount of visitors allowed inside the cave, and as such, it was shut down to the public, whilst a number of safety procedures were introduced. That included padlocking the entrance at night and setting up an online reservation system for wannabe spelunkers. The cave reopened to the public on May 18, 2009. The authorities thought the upgrades would make the cave safer for exploration. They were wrong. This is the haunting account of the worst potholing caving accident in history, and it all began with John Jones. John Edwards Jones was born into a big family of 5 boys and 2 girls. His family were devout Christians, and John was known as a kind, hard-working man with an unwavering faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ. John was 26 and was studying in Virginia to become a pediatric cardiologist. He and his wife had recently welcomed their first child, and his wife was pregnant again with their second baby. John seemingly had everything going for him and a bright future ahead of him. As you can see from the photographs, John really does look like a kind, friendly man. However, one fatal decision would ruin everything, and John would suffer one of the most horrifying deaths imaginable. In November 2009, John had gone back to Utah to spend time with his family, and he and his brother Josh decided to explore Nutty Putty Cave. The brothers had been keen cavers as children and wanted to revisit their childhood adventures. They arrived at the caves on November 24th at around 8 PM and were joined by 9 other friends and acquaintances, all with different levels of experience. Once there, the group divided into 2 smaller groups. One group consisted of children and less experienced adults who planned to explore easier sections of the cave, while the other group, including John, planned to venture deeper into the tunnels. Everything went smoothly for an hour or so. The party had explored the largest room in the cave, named the Big Slide, before John, Josh and 2 others from the experienced group decided they wanted to try and pass through the Birth Canal, a narrow and challenging passageway that eventually opens up into a large room. John was the first to go through. He wriggled into what he thought was the entrance to the Birth Canal. He wriggled further and further into the crevasse, believing that eventually he would get to the opening, inching his way into the narrow passage head first, shuffling forward using his hips, stomach and fingers. However, John wasn't in the Birth Canal. He had inadvertently crawled into a still unmapped part of the cave, and this part of the cave led to a dead end. Unaware of his mistake, John kept moving forward, exhaling air in his chest so that he could fit through a space that was barely 10 inches across and 18 inches high. But instead of coming to an opening, the squeeze took a terrifying sharp downward turn. John couldn't continue and found himself trapped headfirst in the crevasse. Because of the position of his body, He was unable to turn around or push himself back out. All he could do was wait and pray. It was Josh, who had been following John, who realized that his brother was in trouble. He could see his feet poking out of the hole, and he pulled and pulled at them to try and free John. He did manage to move him a couple of inches. However, after realizing John was stuck, he let go of his feet to go and get help, and gravity took hold of John. He slid further into the hole, stuck with one hand pinned underneath him and the other forced backwards. Trapped 400 feet from the cave's entrance and 100 feet beneath the earth, John's every move made his predicament worse. He hung helplessly upside down at a 70-degree angle, a position that was putting great stress on his body. Josh and John said a quick prayer. "Guide us as we work through this," Josh prayed. "Save me for my wife and kids," John said. Josh hurried out of the tunnel as fast as he could to get help. A friend who was also in the tunnel stayed with John to reassure him help was on the way. The first person to arrive to help was Susan, a local rescue volunteer who received the emergency message on her rescue pager and rushed to the scene. She arrived at the scene at 12:30 a.m. on November 25th, and being small and agile, quickly got to where John was trapped inside the cave. This is the part of the conversation they had. "Hi John, my name is Susie. How is it going?" "Hi Susie, thank you for coming, but I really want to get out." Over the next few hours, over 100 more rescuers arrived, and they tried to figure out a way of getting John out. They discussed everything, even lubing the walls with grease, but in the end, they decided to use a rope that passed through a series of climbing cams, with one end tied around John's legs, and the other end pulled by the team. They initially tried unsuccessfully to drill chunks of rock away to make the opening wider, but it proved a fruitless task and they gave up. The position of John's body also complicated matters greatly. He was practically upside down, with just his sneakers visible at the entrance, and the ceiling above his feet was so low they couldn't just pull him out, as his feet would get in the way. Time was ticking quickly, as the rescuers frantically tried to release John. Their first rope system had failed, so they decided to use a pulley system instead, using bolts drilled into the rock to anchor the pulleys. The mission was made even more difficult because the cave was so narrow, only one person could get to John at a time. By this time, John was not doing great. Being stuck upside down for hours meant his heart had to work against gravity to push the blood around his body, and he was having difficulty breathing. He had moments of calm, followed by panic attacks. At one point, they brought a two-way cable radio into the cave and managed to lower it to John so he could speak with his wife, who was near the cave entrance on the surface. They were both able to comfort each other. John had now been trapped upside down for 19 hours, but things started to look up, and there was real hope that John would soon be out. The rescuers finally finished installing their pulley system and tied a rope to John, ready to gently pull him out, with a team of 8 men working in tandem, all tugging as one. The movement at times caused John great pain, so they made frequent pauses. But slowly but surely, John was moving closer to the entrance, until he was high enough to make eye contact with the rescuer closest to him. They said he looked tired, his eyes were red, and his face was dirty, but he was still alive. "How are you?" shouted the rescuers. John replied, "It sucks. I'm upside down. I can't believe I'm upside down. My legs are killing me." But John was almost out. Then, without warning, disaster struck. Something gave way and the entire team fell backwards as the rope went loose in their hands. The closest rescuer to John felt something hit his face, and he passed out for a second. When he came to, he saw nothing but a cloud of dust. The pulley system had given way in the soft rock, and John had slid back down the crevasse even deeper than before. His taste of freedom had been cruelly snatched away. The injured rescuer had to swap places, and it was soon realized that John's breathing was much more shallow and less frequent. It was clear that he was struggling to stay alive. Calls to John were now going unanswered. Rescuers desperately tried to reattach the ropes and pulley system, but it was too late. John was not responding anymore, and soon a medical professional crawled into the cave but was unable to reach John, so instructed a rescuer how to check John's vitals using a stethoscope and thermometer. The rescuer managed to position the stethoscope near John's stomach, but couldn't hear a distinct heartbeat. His lower body felt cold, and a temperature taken from his foot recorded nothing. The paramedic then tried again, and managed to get to John, and he confirmed that he had sadly passed away. After 27 hours, it was over. The rescuers who had battled to save John's life were devastated, as were his family and friends. The suffering John experienced stuck upside down in that crevasse doesn't even bear thinking about. The thoughts that must have been running through his mind whilst he was in there is unimaginable. The very next day, the authorities determined that it was too difficult and dangerous to get John's body out of the cave, and it was decided that the entrance to Nutty Putty would be sealed forever, with John inside. Nutty Putty Cave will forever remain the final resting place for John Edwards Jones, and serves as a tragic reminder of the dangers of spelunking. It's extremely unlikely that John's body will ever be recovered. The story of John Jones sounds almost made up, a fictional event designed to scare people from going caving, but this is real. Today there is a plaque placed at the entrance to Nutty Putty in John's memory. Our heart truly goes out to John's family. Thank you for watching this video. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.